Hello there, welcome back to the channel. And a book should never be judged by its cover. Despite many similarities from many different volumes, people, whatever, you get the analogy. We ain't all the same, and we're never always what we appear to be. And we're going to look at today two examples from I think, from the modern eye, somewhat underrated 1978 series of Battlestar Galactica. Now, I mostly cover on this channel the modern show, but that doesn't mean in any way I don't absolutely adore its original incarnation. And there are actually two Cylons that have always stood out to me. And yes, Cylons, because they are meant to be the identical, mass-produced automatons of destruction. And yet, just like their modern incarnations, there is actually quite a lot of variety amongst them once you get to know them. And there are a couple of examples that stand out. One in particular, which has always stuck with me, and one that definitely stands out as an individual, but for different reasons. Those two are Red-Eye and Cyrus, or Cy for short. We are going to start with Red-Eye. But before we get into him, please like, share, and subscribe, and comment down below. Have you even seen the original Battlestar Galactica? Is it on the modern show that you've seen? If you haven't, you should go back and watch it. It can be very 70s, but for a 70s show, it had one hell of a budget. And this was a show made by some of the greatest sci-fi makers of the era. Buck Rogers. To be honest, I'm not even going to list it. So many good people. So many directors who did things like Star Trek and went on to many other great things. Basically, this was the crucible in which many of the greatest directors, actors and stars of the 80s and 90s started in, or at least made an appearance in. And as I said before, we're going to get started with Red-Eye. This was an attempt by Battlestar Galactica to create a Western-style episode. It is the only instance I can think of outside of something like Westworld where a human being is facing off against a machine in a gunslinger-style gunfight. The basic backstory of Red-Eye was every Cylon raider of that era had 3 Cylons on board. 1 commander, a gunner, and a pilot. And his ship crashed. Now the other 2 Centurions were destroyed. But this one local little thug went to the crash site and he recovered Red-Eye. And when they got him out, Red-Eye, because he'd been damaged, he has a big dent in his head, took one look at this man and said, "By your command." As we know, that is a Cylon catch-all term for "I'm going to do whatever you say because you are my commander." It identified him as its commander, even though it had never seen him before, and he was human, and the Cylons are supposed to be destroying humans, which is a whole thing in that universe, which is a bit different to in the reimagined. But Red-Eye, as he became known by the locals, became his enforcer, and he used Red-Eye to eliminate, shall we say, without violating any of YouTube's censorships, his competition, people that displeased him, or people that wouldn't play ball. He demanded half, very Negan, of everyone's income and resources for his own personal use. Now, this man had already been a power player and a bit of a thug beforehand, but people had been able to kind of deal with him. Now, he just went full Bond villain. And it's like, I've got this machine. If you don't do as you're told, I'm going to send him in. We first meet him when he turns up on an armor-plated horse, and the horse is on this planet Raw, which is interesting, just a thing. It's an armor-plated horse. It looks very medieval, but it's got like Cylon-style plate all over it. And Red-Eye just turns up on this horse and starts making demands of the locals. And then the rest of the time we see him, we sat at the bar, well, not at the bar, near the bar, always near his particular patron, his new imperious leader. And Apollo also crashes on this world, finds out what's happening, and initially is reluctant to get involved until he realizes it's a Cylon. He thinks that Red-Eye is just some local thug. But he realizes after getting a close look at Red-Eye that Red-Eye's damaged. He's already taken several bullet wounds because several people locally have already tried to deal with Red-Eye, not wanting to keep answering to this thug. But their local weapons are simply not colonial grade, and they can't actually destroy a Cylon. Maybe a lucky shot might happen one day, but multiple people have already been killed trying to fight this guy. So it ain't going too good. Apollo hides his identity, worrying that Red-Eye might identify him for being a colonial soldier, but it's quite clear that Red-Eye doesn't have any recollection, but he is able to detect that Apollo wants to destroy him. Eventually, this culminates in Apollo coming into town and basically squaring off initially against one of the other thugs, but the new Imperious leader goes, "Oh no," clicks his fingers, which he does to get Red-Eye's attention. Red-Eye comes walking out of the bar, and the two of them have a literal standoff at the OK Cylon Corral, and obviously Apollo wins. Red-Eye is defeated, and the bad guy runs off. He actually never meets justice. They never deal with him. They probably do at a later date, but it's not shown. That was a little unsatisfying. Red-Eye stands out because it's the only time in the show, and I mean the only time, where a single Cylon is shown to be a threat. Before that, they were always a collective mass, and Starbuck and Apollo, Colonel Ty, whoever's fighting them, they're blasting Centurions left, right, and center with their pistols. It's like it's almost a joke. I mean, sometimes the levity level in the 70s show is a little too high for considering just how many billions of people have just been killed. But the show does every now and again reiterate the actual trauma and negative side effects of the Cylons and what they did. And this is the rare occasion where we actually see what just a single Centurion can do to an unprepared population. These aren't colonial warriors. They're not up against colonial Vipers or a Battlestar. These are farmers, civilians who lack the military-grade weaponry needed to deal with an armor-plated robot. And they simply can't destroy it. And it actually steps up the menace of just how dangerous Cylon really could be. If this guy wanted to, if he wasn't on a leash, this Centurion could have killed every last man, woman, and child in every settlement that it could find, and there was literally nothing they seemed to be able to do to stop him. It brought up the fear factor, and that's why he stands out. Next, we have Cy. Cy is the one that really stuck out to me I remember when I was a kid originally watching it. He's actually from the second Battlestar series, so don't judge me for actually appreciating something in Battlestar 1980. And it's from the final episode, The Return of Starbuck. Starbuck is not in Battlestar Galactica 1980, in case you're unfamiliar. But in this last episode, he is. He's in this one last episode. It was meant to spin off that he'd be in it more after that, but the show got cancelled. That's a whole thing. Cy stands out because Starbuck, again, crashes on a planet like Apollo did, as does a Cylon raider. He goes to the raider to scavenge parts, supplies, whatever. He finds the 3 Centurions, 2 destroyed beyond repair, but there's one that's still repairable. So for a company or whatever, he decides to fix Centurion and takes its weapon away and he keeps it at gunpoint. And throughout their relationship, he teaches Cy compassion. He teaches him card games. He basically appeals to the sentient nature of the machine. These machines, you see, they're intelligent. They've just never really interacted with humans, so they didn't know any different than what their imperious leaders had told them, that humans were the enemy, humans were evil and had to be destroyed. But they're capable of empathy and so much more, and the Cylon learns that Starbuck is not his enemy. Starbuck poses no real threat, doesn't want to pose a threat, doesn't want this war. And eventually he learns that humans and Cylons could get along. There's no reason for them to be destroying one another. And it's basically Enemy Mine, but a few years before Enemy Mine came out. Although, before we think that Enemy Mine, which is a 1985 movie that's got a very similar idea of 2 enemies crash landing on a planet and then having to work together to survive, which is basically what's happening here. In order for the Centurion to survive, it needs Starbuck. Starbuck needs the Centurion to survive. Enemy Mine didn't, or probably didn't, steal the idea from Battlestar Galactica because it's based on a book that's older than Battlestar Galactica. Just saying. So once they overcome their differences, they do eventually learn how to cooperate, which is cool. And it's a very good story about how 2 mortal enemies who've been at each other's throats for years, from 2 civilizations that have been trying to destroy each other for generations, can actually, once they get to know each other, realize that there's no reason for it. There's no purpose behind it. It's all futile. And they come together for common good. Eventually, Cy has to sacrifice himself so that Starbuck and a woman and her child that were also on the planet can escape when the other Cylons turn up. And he holds them off and is ultimately destroyed. sacrificing himself for his new friend. Basically, a Cylon lays down its life for a human, something that would have been unthinkable before this event. But it demonstrates to Starbuck and others that there's more to the Cylons. There is more potential. A peace is possible. It could be achieved. Because if even the lonely Centurion could learn it, then the others could learn it. And it is actually an exceptional episode, and it's got its comedy moments, but it has heart, and it was better. It was good to see the other side of the Cylons rather than these stormtrooper-esque robots or B-1 battle droid level disposable soldiers that they're just there for the colonials to blow up. That actually there is a robotic person there. There is a whole sentient being encased in that armor. Now, obviously, the Reimagined series took these elements 20 years later and really ran with them and did I'm even going to say a better job. But these episodes showed both the menace of a Centurion and the potential of the Centurions to be more. And I think they are, even though it was in Battlestar Galactica in 1980, which is a tragically bad follow-up show to what was an excellent series from 1978. But Battlestar 1980 is terrible. But that episode is excellent, and Psy is fantastic. And again, it shows that people who are enemies can come together. Very enemy mine, as I said, but there we go. It's not plagiarism because it came out 5 years before it. So what can I say? Good idea, excellent episode. And those are two Centurions that, to me, when watching that show, really stand out because they emphasize the potential. And it almost makes you sad that Battlestar never really continued. There were attempts in the 1990s to actually bring it back. Richard Hatch even created a proposed sequel series that he did a little bit of a clip show trailer for, which actually then did evolve into the Reimagined series. They just didn't do it as a direct sequel. There are fan sequel theories out there that actually, this has happened before thing, where actually these colonies were anew, descended from some offshoot from the original ones that were destroyed in the Reimagined series, and the Earth they encounter, I think Reimagined is obviously a primitive Earth, but the Earth that the new series encounters is modern Earth, so it's all this has happened before, all this has happened again. It's just this perpetual cycle that perhaps the Cylon Empire, because the Cylon Empire, for some context in the original show, they weren't made by humans. They were just this race of machines that were out there, supposedly originally created by an organic race that was now extinct. That's if sort of true, maybe-ish. It was never fully explored properly. They're said to be reptilian, but from a human point of view in the colonies, who knows? Maybe they weren't. You really want to squint, you could say that those Centurions from the 1970s show were descendants of the last Centurions that left Earth at the end of the journey of the colonials and the Cylons when they went to colonize the Earth as their new homeworld. And they went off and they founded the new Cylon Empire, and over many millennia became them, re-encountered humans and decided, oh, those humans were bad. Don't remember why you're bad, but there's a reason you're bad, we're going to destroy you. And then they go looking for Earth as well. There's an interesting idea, and then they become Terminators. Because that's what I believe. All this has happened before, and all this will happen again. Going off on a tangent, which I am going to try and stop now. Sorry. As an appendix, there is also a comic book series that's very likely non-canonical to the original show, where Psy actually does live and is recovered by the Cylons, but then isn't opposed to them. He questions everything about the Cylon Empire and the mission to exterminate the human race, believing it to be wrong. The comic book series, I believe, was never finished. I haven't actually read it. I just came across it during my research for this episode. Most of my research being rewatching Battlestar Galactica, the 1970s show, and Googling stuff while I was watching it. But there we go. If you've made it to the end of this video, please like, share, and subscribe. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts on these two particular Cylons in the comment section down below. And were there any other Cylons that stood out in either the modern show, which itself is still quite old now, and the original 70s series? Was there anything that stood out to you? Let me know in the comment section down below. And the reasons why. That said, you're at the end. Bye-bye.